Unit 5. Focus on Causal Analysis. Chapter 14. The American Civil War. Why it happened. Part 2. Listening. Page 96. A. Initial listening. Now let's listen to a talk about the causes and effects of the American Civil War. It may help you to concentrate on the talk if you close your eyes while you listen. Just relax and listen carefully.
The American Civil War was fought over 100 years ago. It began in 1861 and lasted until 1865. The battles of the American Civil War resulted in the death of 620,000 Americans. What caused this terrible civil war between the North and the South? Well, historians believe that there were many causes of the war. One of the important causes of the war was the friction between the North and the South over the issue of slavery. The Southern way of life and the Southern economy were based on the use of slave labor. For almost 250 years before the Civil War, the economy of the South depended on the use of black slaves. The slaves were used to plant and pick cotton and tobacco. Cotton and tobacco were the main crops grown in the South. Most Southerners did not think it was wrong to own, buy, or sell slaves like farm animals. Slavery was, in fact, the foundation of the entire economy and way of life in the South. This was not the situation in the North. The Northern economy did not depend on the use of slave labor. Why not? Well, in the South, there were many large cotton plantations that used hundreds of slaves. In the North, however, there were smaller farms. The Northern farmers planted many different kinds of crops, not just cotton or tobacco. The Northerners did not need slaves, since their farms were smaller than most of the Southern plantations. In fact, many Northerners were so opposed to slavery that they wanted to end slavery completely. The Northern attitude against slavery made the Southerners angry. So, for many years before the war, there was constant friction between the North and the South over this issue. This friction eventually led to war. There was other friction, too, as I said before, between the North and the South. There were, in other words, other causes of conflict between the North and the South. One involved the growth of industry in the North. While the South remained an agricultural area, the North became more and more industrialized. As industry increased in the North, it brought more people and greater wealth to the Northern states. As a result, many Southerners began to fear Northern political and economic domination. Because of this fear, many Southerners believed that the South should leave the Union and that they should form their own country. In 1860, the Southerners decided it was time to leave the Union when Abraham Lincoln became President of the United States. Lincoln, as you may know, was against slavery. The people of the South were afraid that their way of life and their economic system were in danger with Lincoln in the presidency. Consequently, the Southern states decided to secede from the Union. In other words, they wanted to break away from the North and form a separate country. In 1861, South Carolina seceded. And by June of 1861, 11 Southern states had seceded and established a new country. They called the new country the Confederate States of America. The war between the North and the South began when the Southern states seceded from the Union. The main reason that the North went to war against the South was to bring the Southern states back into the Union. In other words, the North went to war to keep the United States one country. After 4 years of terrible fighting, the North won the war against the South, and the United States remained one country. The North won the war mainly because of its economic and industrial strength and power. The Civil War had two important results for the United States. Number one, the Civil War preserved the United States as one country, and number two, it ended slavery in the United States. Many Americans wonder what the United States would be like today if the South had won the Civil War. The history of the United States would have been very different if the South had won the war between the states.